Last time, on the 6th session of Getting Ready for Christmas, we looked briefly at that amazing prophecy that we all recognize from Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Since that prophecy indicates that it is a sign, I want to take a closer look at it tonight. Signs are important. They are things that we watch for, things that tell us something important, or they are things that give validation or proof, as in this case, that the prophecy that was given has come to pass. As we said last week, Isaiah was a prophet in Jerusalem during the time that God's people were divided. The northern kingdom, known usually as Israel, and the southern kingdom, known as Judah, the name of the tribe through which the prophets had said the Messiah would come. In the 7th chapter of Isaiah, we see Syria joining forces with part of the northern kingdom to make war against Judah. And this ganging up, if you will, scares King Ahaz. So the Lord sent Isaiah the prophet to Ahaz the king and tells him, "Fear not." We see that in verse 4 of chapter 7. It will not happen. Isaiah prophesies that the northern kingdom will fall. It did to Assyria. And that Judah will be taken captive by Babylon, but then return and be restored. They did return, and they were restored. Now again, the prophecy in verse 14, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. This prophecy was made concerning a specific event in the time of Isaiah, this ganging up by Syria and Ephraim, part of the northern kingdom. I didn't really go into it last week, but this is one of those prophecies with multiple layers of fulfillment. The word virgin here, in verse 14, is the same word as young girl, indicating one who is growing into womanhood and readiness for marriage. In that culture, let's be very clear, that word would have carried the same connotation as our term virgin, because that was the normal expectation for a young girl who was not yet married. In fact, the root of that word means to lie hidden, to lie hidden. Picture a Jewish father being hyper-protective of his maturing daughter from those rascal men, hiding her, keeping her away from them. There was no opportunity for promiscuity in that world. Now, a short time later, in chapter 8, Isaiah tells of what most believe would have been a second wife. His first wife had passed away. She would have been a virgin at the time that they got married, because that was the normal expectation. But now, in chapter 8, as his wife, he refers to her as the prophetess, she bears him a son. Look at chapter 8, verse 4. Before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be taken away before the king of Assyria. Now, think about that, but let me refer back to chapter 7, verse 16. Part of that prophecy, right after Isaiah had said the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, he then says, before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that you dread will be forsaken by both her kings. Do we see the parallel here? In 7:16, a reference to those two countries that are threatening Judah, and then in chapter 8, verse 4, this child who is born before the child has knowledge to cry, my father or my mother, then the riches of Damascus, the spoil of Samaria would be taken away. Damascus is the area of Syria. Samaria is the area of Ephraim. So that prophecy that covers chapter 7 and into chapter 8, that prophecy, the destruction by Assyria of the two enemies or the two countries that are threatening Judah, is exactly what happened. That prophecy was fulfilled. The child that we see there in chapter 8, the child was the sign that would prove the prophecy had come to pass. Now, unlike Mary, this wife of Isaiah, likely, was a virgin at the time of the prophecy, but not at the time of the birth. So there's no miracle birth happening here in the Old Testament. But still, the prophecy was significant because who could predict a son being born 2 or 3 years in the future? And then these threatening nations just happened to be captured right at the time that it was prophesied. Now, I might say that what I've just explained and described is what most Jews believe. The destruction by Assyria was fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah in chapter 7 in its entirety. The prophecy that says, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. The Jews typically believe that what we find there in chapter 8 is the complete fulfillment of that prophecy. But that's only the first layer. You see, Isaiah keeps talking. He continues to make connections between that prophecy and the destiny of the tribe of Judah to produce the Messiah. Just one of those continuing connections is what we find in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. Add to that the fact that New Testament writers frequently refer back to Isaiah's prophecies, and it's clear that they saw the signs. They saw the signs and knew that the signs validated the prophecy's more important second layer. The Virgin Mary would conceive and bear a son, Emmanuel, God with us.